Hi everyone, Brian Valerio, VP in the Proxy Solicitation Group at Alliance Advisors. I'm back with another Corp Gov alert. This time I'm joined by Melissa Carlson, who is a VP also in the Proxy Solicitation Group at Alliance Advisors. Melissa and I work very closely together. And what Melissa's real specialty is and expertise is she manages and runs a lot of the retail outreach efforts, a lot of the call campaigns and the retail engagement efforts with our clients. So I thought it would be perfect to bring Melissa in and talk about a very recent and very pressing change that we have seen to the voting policies of one of the most prominent and largest brokers. TD Ameritrade appears to no longer be applying proportionate voting to routine ballot items at shareholder meetings. This is a brand new development, something that has just started in 2021. Prior to 2021, they were utilizing proportionate voting. This was the type of change that we had hypothesized might be coming down the pipe with TD Ameritrade's merger with Charles Schwab. Last year around this time, Charles Schwab announced that they were no longer going to be utilizing proportionate voting going forward. And at that time, we had written an article and we talked about how this might be the next step. Turns out that this, in fact, was the next step. And now TD Ameritrade is following suit and is also not utilizing proportionate voting at their shareholder meetings. So we anticipate that this is going to have a profound impact on shareholder meetings for companies of all sectors and of all market caps during the 2021 proxy season and beyond. So let's talk about what proportionate voting is and some of the different ballot items that this might impact. So first, the New York Stock Exchange allows brokers to vote on certain items on behalf of their clients that don't actively vote their shares. And brokers are only permitted to do this. They're only permitted to vote on behalf of their clients for routine ballot items. So some of the proposals where we anticipate this will have the largest impact are reverse stock splits and increases in authorized number of common shares. So let's talk about the different types of voting that brokers can utilize. So brokers can utilize three different forms of voting. They can participate in discretionary voting, they can utilize proportionate voting, or they can take no action. So brokers who participate in discretionary voting have historically voted uninstructed shares held by their clients in line with the board's recommendations, Brokers who utilize proportionate voting, essentially what they do is they vote the uninstructed shares in the same proportion to the shares that were actively voted by their clients, by their holders. So for example, if a company has 100 shares that are held by a proportionate voting broker and 50 of those shares were actually voted, and of those 50 shares, 30 voted for a proposal and 20 voted against the proposal, the remaining 50 unvoted shares would then be voted in the same proportion, 30, 20, for, and against. Finally, brokers can utilize no action. They can take no action on behalf of the uninstructed shares, which means that those shares are not voted and not represented at the shareholder meeting. So this is such a big change because TD Ameritrade, one of the largest retail brokers in the United States, had traditionally used proportionate voting, but now they appear to be taking no action on those shares. So brokers' ability to vote uninstructed shares has been a major tool for companies to, particularly companies with high retail ownership, to achieve quorum and get the necessary number of shares represented, to hold their meetings. So Melissa, as this is the backdrop, how do you anticipate this change is going to impact call campaigns and retail outreach efforts going forward?
It's going to become much more costly. He's going to have to send out a lot more mailers, reminder mailings. Also, they're going to probably have to send out many more hard copies because of notice and access. There seems to be, if you receive a notice and access through your email, less likely to vote and participate in that meeting. Now, without the discretionary voting, you need to have as many retail investors participate. The hard copies would hopefully initiate the retail investors to partake in that meeting.
Because generally retail holders need a little bit more urging, if you will, to participate and to vote.
Yes, correct.
So now, what are some strategies that we could see companies utilize to counteract this recent change?
And they would have to start being aggressive from the get-go. You would have to send out reminder mailings, postcards, messages from the CEO, or somebody of, that nature at the company. Also engaging with the shareholders and knowing their shareholder base before the actual meeting is going to, take place. So throughout the whole year, engage with your shareholders. I would suggest possibly, reaching out to their holders, throughout the year, being, understanding their shareholder base and engaging with them prior to the meeting so that they do have, a good relationship with their shareholders. So they would want to participate and support their recommendations at the meeting.
So when you say reach out and engage with the retail community throughout the year, this is something that traditionally has been done on the institutional side. But are you seeing a real change where now this is the type of engagement that issuers are doing or should be doing on the retail side?
I would think that they should be doing this on the retail side now, because I don't think that retail holders understand the importance of voting. And if we are no longer able to utilize the discretionary voting, they're going to have as many of their retail holders support them as they can.
And I imagine that during these peacetime conversations, during the off-season conversations outside of the solicitation season, these conversations would center around kind of the business objectives and ensuring that the holder is familiar with how the potential ballot items at an upcoming meeting would tie into those business objectives. And that seems like it would be something that would then likely garner support, would then likely lead the retail holder to be more likely to support the issuer's objectives going forward. Is that the type of conversations we're talking about?
Yes, exactly, precisely. That's it. And maybe also take additional steps to educate the retail holders of how important it is to vote their shares. Because many times if I spoke to a holder, they don't think it's important. It doesn't make a difference if they vote or if they don't vote, but it does make a big difference.
So it's going to take a more robust effort, is essentially the theme that I'm hearing from this. And it's going to take more than just making a few rounds of outgoing calls to retail holders.
Absolutely.
Or just relying on the votes to come in, as they would without doing an active engagement effort. Those are some great insights, and definitely something that I'll continue to keep in mind and I'll share with my clients when we have to do some of these retail campaigns this year. I think we anticipate this being a more challenging year for retail campaigns. We've seen the explosion of retail ownership. We've seen the explosion of Robinhood ownership with a lot of holders who have small amounts of shares, which is fractionalized even to a greater extent the ownership profile of these retail held companies. So with all these things coming together, I think it's really going to require the holistic approach that you described, where you've got to utilize mailings, phone calls, maybe emails if you have them, all of your tools that you have in order to get in front of these holders and reinforce that this is an important thing that requires their attention and their support in order for the company to achieve its best objectives.
Yes, exactly.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, Melissa. I'll catch up with you shortly offline so we can talk about some of the strategies we use today for the clients that we're working on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.